Well, another big event happened in 1988 in Melbourne, Australia. NASCAR held the
Oh,
exhibition race at Thunderdome. Bill, I know you were there because I was there,
yes.
and that was a pretty wild time.
Now I'm going to ask you, talking about Australia, does this mean anything?
Hold it up a little bit
Can you
higher.
see it?
Hold it up a little bit higher.
Higher?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord, have mercy. That is the, oh, golly. That is the writers and a bunch of the PR crew heading
Few
out.
old friends in there.
That's right. Drinking Victoria bitters.
We were on our way, if you remember, we were on our way to see the Outback.
That's
And
right.
we got slabs of beer, remember?
Yep.
Quite a bunch of people. Oh yeah, I see it in the screen up there. A real bunch of people up there. And there's a guy right back here, Steve White.
Yeah, I see them all, including you.
Yeah, that was great, Australia. Neil Bonnet won that race.
That's right.
Yeah, Neil Bonnet won that race. And I'll never forget, we just had a great time out there. Well, all of us did. We really enjoyed it. I remember we had hats with the little dingy things on them to keep the flies off of us. And drank a lot of beer. And the Australian people are the most friendly people in the world.
I agree.
They
I
are.
agree. You know, one of the Australian newspapers, I recall, had a pretty vivid description of you. Do you remember that?
Yeah. In fact, I got kicked off about what they called me. I was, oh God, I can't remember the exact words. I was arrogant, a show off, or whatever. And there was a word they used, and I said, well, of course I am.
Yeah.
I agreed with them entirely. Yeah, I remember that. I forgot all about that, Steve, until you brought it up now.
Yeah.
No, they didn't care for me. That particular writer didn't care. We weren't proper, I guess.
Okay, I'd like to know about the Racestoppers. They were around since '69. A couple of questions.
Yeah,
What was your job?
Racestoppers.
What was your job with them? And did you have?
I was their boss. I happen to have some photos here, if you bear with me.
Okay.
Because I figured you might ask. That program originally started out as truck stoppers, and the sales department used them for promotion in the opening of truck stops. And when the PR department really started to take off in '69 when I moved in, that was the first Daytona 500 was the first race we ever had the Racestopper course. Well, Pure Oil had Winky Louise as Miss Firebird and Linda Vaughn as Miss Firebird. And with the changing of the companies, they said, well, gee, one was good, more is better. And so they hired girls. And when I went to work, I inherited the job, being the first, of being the boss of the Racestoppers.
Huh.
And it ended up to be a great program. And at one time we had 9 girls. I'll back up here a little bit.
Yeah.
We know some of them, but I had nine of them at one. We never worked them all at one time, but these were the Racestoppers. They were all professional models, or had good jobs that they could talk about. When we would go do a television show, a talk show, we would talk about the race they were promoting and all, but they could talk about themselves. Because I had Toy Russell was the makeup artist for the late night talk show guy, real short for a kid. Drawing a blank. And I had an audiologist and real estate. They were all college grads. And that's what made us different from just a quote beauty queen. Mm-hmm. And that program was a terrific program. Nobody in your profession is going to write about gas and oil in a race. that's about as exciting as watching grass grow. I mean, it just doesn't fit unless something bad happens. If you hear a noise, that's my cell phone. Don't worry about it. The company got publicity from visual, Unocal logo name. People were resenting, and if you saw me or one of the girls, you saw Unocal. So that program is what carried us, not the written word. And that's what I had to work with on my approach to getting publicity for the company. And I'm especially proud of the girls and what we did. We never had a scandal, never had in almost 29 years that I ran the car, not one word of a scandal of any kind. It was just, they were great to work with. None of them had ever been to a race. I can't remember any of my girls, any of the Racestoppers had ever been to a race before they went to work for us. But they fell in love with racing, and they loved the people, and they loved the drivers. The hardest thing I had two rough moments with the Racestoppers. One of my originals was a young lady by the name of Sharon Brown, who lived in Atlanta, tall girl you may know. I had to let her go. Not for anything, but we had a rule: the girls are not allowed to date anybody in racing or anybody in racing or be seen or doing anything. Well, Sharon was going with Peter Revson, had to deal with Peter Revson, the Grand Prix driver, IndyCar driver. I knew about it. And I told Sharon, I said, Sharon, you're playing with fire now. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if word gets out, or somebody, if it becomes known that you're dating and with Peter, I'm going to have to let you go. She said, I understand, Bill. She says, I know the rules. I know what you're doing. Well, in Indianapolis, a female sports writer was looking for something to write about, and she wrote in a column or whatever that Sharon was dating Peter Revson, and they were an item and so on in the Indianapolis News. I had to call her. I said, Sharon, we're going to meet. And I flew to Atlanta, and I told her, I says, you knew the rules. She says, yep, I know. And it happened, and I had to let her go. That was hard. And the second one was Doja Wall was my longest standing race stopper. Just a wonderful gal, just a wonderful, terrific gal. And the time came, she was with us for about, 20 years, I guess, 16 years, a long time. I had to let her go. I told her, I says, Doja, you're getting too old. Now that's hard to talk to a woman to tell her she's getting, but she knew. She says, yeah. She said, I love it. I know. And she was still a great looking gal and all, but it was, the other girls were younger and all, and it showed. And she understood. And we had a going away party for her in Atlanta, the Atlanta race. And that was an emotional thing. And that was really hard. And I stayed friendly with her. She was on Facebook, and we did stuff over the years. And she passed away a little over a year ago from cancer. She got a real quick, very bad cancer. But we were great friends, and that was very difficult. But other than that, the Racestopper Corps was fantastic. We got gobs of publicity, Victory Lane. The photographers knew them. They knew photographers. We would set up shots. And it was, I think, to be humble, one of the best publicity programs that ever came down the pike.
Now, you said that you had rules that the Racestoppers could not date the drivers. Did you ever have to set any of the drivers or crew members or people in the sport, did you ever have to set them straight on how they were treating your race stoppers?
No, I never said anything to them, but I warned the girls. I mean, hey, let's face it. They're beautiful women. They're working in a job. They know they're going to get hit on. And I told them so. I said, hey, everybody's going to hit on you. They're going to tell you every story, and you have to say no, but you can blame me. I said, you tell them, gee, I would love to go out with you. Oh, I'd love, but that Brodrick guy won't let me do it, and I'll get fired if I find out. So go talk to him. He's the guy that's making life miserable for us. Well, that worked, and eventually, after a while, everybody knew that they weren't going to go out, so that all eased off. But boy, in the beginning, for a while, yeah, they all got hit on it, but I never had to say anything to the drivers, or I wouldn't do that because guys are guys and racers are racers, and I knew what was going to be happening, so no problem there.
How did the Henry McLemore Award come about, and what was your role in it, especially with the banquet at Daytona every year?
The McLemore came around. We wanted to do something for the media, recognize the media. And I asked Mr. France, Bill France Sr., I says, we want to do something, and what do we call it, Bill? And he says, why don't you name it after Henry McLemore? Well, Henry McLemore was a sports writer and shared Volkswagen with Grantland Rice and Raymond, all the famous sports guys. And he was a first national recognized writer to write copy and print on motorsports. And he was a friend of Bill Francis also. And after he retired from the paper, I think he worked for a little bit for Bill France. And France says, why don't you call it the McLemore Award? I says, that's fine, Mr. France, be glad to do it. So we went and we put together, I said, I want this thing to really be legit, and it's going to do it. And we took the guys from the racing panel and the professionals such as yourself who knew motorsports and knew the writers and everybody. And we set the criteria up that, hey, this is going to honor Henry, but we want to honor somebody in the media for outstanding work that they do. And so we started out and we had a voting from the panel, basically. I think it was a racing panel, there's a voting of all the motorsports broadcasters and writers. And Royce Britt from the AP was the first guy to get the McLemore Award.
How did the panel of experts come about, as well as the record club awarded for qualifying at the Southern 500?
Well, the racing panel came around. That was in existence before I went to work for the company. Pure Oil had the racing panel, but it was run by Daytona. The company was paying the Daytona PR department to have the racing panel of experts, was a group of motorsports writers and broadcasters to pick the winner of the race, to establish basically the favorite driver to win the race. And we had a voting process and whatever, but just about everybody on covered nothing but NASCAR or stock car racing. And it was run by Daytona. And when I came on board at the company, I said, this can be more than just a stock car racing thing and get us a little more publicity. We need to incorporate open wheel racing, all the major races. We need to do the major races, and we need to run it out of the company office. We need to control it, of who does what and how it's handled. So we took it over from Daytona and moved everything to Palatine, Illinois at that time, which is where we were. Excuse me. And I started running, I controlled the racing panel out of there, and we tried to make it as legitimate as possible for true journalists, true broadcasters who were professionals, not just a weekend guy who once in a while, or a sports editor who wanted to be on the panel and all. We tried to make it as professional as we possibly could, but we took over. But I inherited that program.
Okay. When and how did you retire, Bill?
I didn't retire. I
Huh.
was fired.
Oh.
Unocal was sold in 1968 or 67. They were sold. Unocal got out of business and sold the company to Tosco. And Tosco was an oil refinery in the East Coast. They had those stations. They were a refinery selling product to cut rate gas stations. They didn't know they bought a racing division, but they took over and a new broom sweeps clean, as they say. I wanted to make 30 years with the company. And so I had a new boss in 1968. We ran in 68. Things were going along as they had been. And it was the end of the 1968 season that
68?
or not 68, and then it was 97, I guess it was, in the 97 season. 68 is when I started. I'm talking about when I'm leaving, for crying out loud. I went in at the end of the season because Unocal had been gone, and I had stayed on with Tosco as a contractor. Nothing changed, working out of the office. Everything was going straight. And at the end of the season, I went in to talk to the new boss that I've been working for all year. And I said, well, the season's over. This is after the Atlanta race. I said, I wanted to talk about working one more year before I retired. And we sit down, and I went in, and he says, I'm telling you, this is a quote, I don't need you anymore. I said, what? He said, no, I don't need you anymore. We're going to let you go. And I said, well, you're the boss. Okay. And so that day I was fired. But this is funny. I went in my office and I wrote up a little news release that the Hat Man got fired. And the day after I got fired, in the USA Today, on the second page of the sports, above the fold, in the special block, was a big headline, Hat Man fired, and had a picture of me and Earnhardt in Victory Lane, and did the whole thing. And I got caught into the office. What the heck is this? I thought, well, you fired me. There are people who they need to know. And here it was, and he got a call from the headquarters in Tosco because they had been deluged with phone calls saying, what's going on? Who's this guy, Brodrick? And what are you doing? But anyway, I was out the door. So that's the way it worked. And then for a year, I put 29 years of racing experience plus about 5 years of journalistic media racing experience to very good work. I bought a tavern. And I had to go to work. I was 24 hours a day. I never worked so hard in all my life. I was responsible for people, but the neighborhood tavern in my town, blue collar tavern, beer and shooter joint came up, and my son wanted the tavern. And my wife got on my case. Because whatever my son wanted, my wife was going to, you've got to buy this tavern. I said, I don't want no tavern. I said, I don't know anything about it. Ended up, I bought a tavern. Had it for 11 years. It was work. That was work. But it was fun. But and when the Depression hit in 2008, that hurt us pretty bad. When the housing bubble broke and everything. And eventually, then I had to turn it. I got pressured to turn the whole thing over to my son. I was smart enough when we formed the company. I owned majority of the company and was able to control things, but she wanted to turn it over. I turned it all over to my son, and I kept my ownership, but eventually we just had problems and we had to get rid of it, and I got out of the tavern business.
Now, I know that you were known as the Hat Man, but I'm not sure that I ever saw you actually wearing a hat. Do you have any kind of hat collection from the victory lanes that you worked?
I don't wear hats because I had a wonderful flowing lock of hair, which I still have, thank the good Lord. And I wasn't about to wear a hat. And I just didn't like hats. It's funny, the way the name Hat Man came around, people saw me on television in Victory Lane because of what I did. They didn't know who I was. They didn't know my name. I got no credits. That's fine. But I was there week in, week out, IndyCar, sports car, or whatever. I happened to be in Victory Lane doing my thing. But I was handing out hats, and it was part of the B-roll. They always showed me throwing the hats on. And it would ended up, I'd be walking somewhere, and a fan would go, "Hey, Hat Man, how you doing today? Hey, Hat Man, what's going on?" And it stuck. I became the Hat Man. It's fine with me, no problem. Excuse me, and that's how the name came around. And it just, and when I was in writing, and people say, "Oh, the Hat Man did this," or one reason or another, and I became the Hat Man. And in fact, I had it trademarked for a while. I trademarked the Hat Man so nobody could steal it, because my ego wouldn't let me do anything else other than that. But it worked out well, and it's just one of those things that came around.
Bill, how would you like to be remembered by race fans?
By racers? Oh man, that's a good question, Rick. I just like to be remembered as a guy who did his job, did it good, and contributed in a small way. Hopefully, I hope so, to make the sport a little better for the viewers, for the people who are in the sport, by making their job easier, and by making the entertainment side, the victory lane side and all, a little more enjoyable for the viewers, for the people out there who are watching right now. And if I could just remember it as a guy who did his job well. As a PR man, I never begged anybody. I had never pulled any shenanigans. A lot of times I never let the facts get in the way of a good story, but we somebody who did his job well and was fair to everybody. That if they could just say that, I'd be perfectly happy.
Well, Bill, to me, you were all that. And on a personal note, I can honestly tell you that knowing you all these years in the sport made that sport and the working in that sport much more fun than I ever thought it would be. And I thank you for it.
Well, in those days, I thank the good Lord all the time that I was part of the, quote, golden age of stock car racing. People have called it that. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I was part of that golden age of stock car racing. And it's just time, right place, right time, and doing everything, and being able to help out. I remember one time we were in Indianapolis. Jim Hunter was writing for the Atlanta Journal, and Mark Donahue won the race. And I had an airplane, in Indy, I was borrowed a company airplane. They had a little twin beaches. Nobody liked to fly in, and I was able to steal that every once in a while. And I was going to get guys from Indianapolis down to Charlotte. And Jim Hunter, who later went to work for NASCAR, was a motorsports writer, very good, was covering the race. Well, we were he was writing the lead, and I told Jim, I said, Jim, I'll write a sidebar for you because I know you got to do one. That's a sidebar for people watching, is a column type feature. And he said, oh, great, fine. We get out here that much quicker because I want to get everybody in an airplane head for Charlotte. And so I wrote a sidebar on Mark Donahue. It was his birthday when he won the race. Mark and fine, everything went on. Well, it ended up later on, I found out that good old Jim entered my story under his byline, and that was fine. I told him to put his byline on it. Entered his story in a journalistic contest and won $100 first place prize with my story. And I said, Jim, where's my cut? What are you talking about? There ain't no money here. Never saw a dime of the money, but that's the life of a PR man.
That's a great story. Bill, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you.
Yes, sir.